Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Sunday edition here on KTN News. Thank you for staying with us. Let's now take a look at what's happening in the newspapers in this country, that is on political pages. My guests again, Brian Mutie, Hesbon Owila, Professor Eri Tumbo, and Dismas Mokua. Thank you, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right. In this Sunday Standard, we have a lot. There is a lot of politics, dirty politics. Mudama launches fresh attack on Kalonzo. That is on page 2. Shall be taking a look at that shortly. How cartels force up food prices. Shall also be talking about this. Of course, this has been coming out as an issue of this election because of the high cost of living, the skyrocketing prices of basic commodities. A lot of flack. Jubilee taking a lot of flack for that. Faceless middlemen are profiteering from the artificial shortages they create, leaving supermarkets without maize flour, milk and sugar. That is on pages 10, 11, 32 and 33. And of course, the splash on Sunday Standard, 20 die in a horror crash, an accident that happened on that Busia-bound bus that was involved in an accident at Soisambu in Gilgil on the Nairobi-Nakuru highway. Let's now start with that political story on page 2. Fiery Mudama launches fresh attack on Kalonzo. Brian, I don't know if you have the lowdown on this. Well, this happening in your backyard. Mudama having quit the Wiper Party, was saying that he quit the Wiper Party a few days ago, now saying that he has a very damaging, he will be unraveling very damaging issues surrounding Kalonzo Musyoka. What's happening here?
I think he rides on what Olo was actually saying, that he had a dossier for Jubilee after he quit. And this one is also on the similar track where Mudama is claiming to have a dossier about his former party leader. But I must say that is a aggrieved person, having been beaten on his game, because while he was actually thinking that he was holding a Wiper at ransom, Wiper actually dished something that was able to match him even. And he got a replacement, and that's why now he's feeling that as much as he wants to say that he has something against the party leader. But the problem started with him because as much as he had some issues with the party or the party leadership, he ought to have found a way of actually addressing the issue without taking that drastic emotional measure that he took. And as I said before, Ben, his action was somehow, malicious in the first place, because even the timing of his, declaration that he's not going to vie for that seat, it was really not the right one, because he ought to have given
Wiper a lot of time to have a candidate, right?
If at all, he means well for the party.
Enoch Wambua, Kitui senatorial aspirant, a former editor here at the Standard, says Kalonzo has come of age and can negotiate his way around. The fact is, for a long time now, Mudama has never had Kalonzo's interest at heart. The Mokweni Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. says, I have no idea what is informing all this, but I will not be surprised if this issue gets nasty, personal, and out of hand. Hesbon, what do you think has been Mudama's play here?
I think the biggest thing that is coming to the fore right now is the fact that Mudama has been the power behind Kalonzo. And unfortunately, just like Enoch is saying, Kalonzo has come of age. And I have a feeling that there's a sense in which Mudama has perceived Kalonzo to be, his own man, making his own decision, churning his own political career and stuff like that. And I don't think it boils down well with Mudama. And hence, you have this kind of outbursts. And I think it's quite unfortunate that it's coming down to personal issues. When you have a serious politician like Mudama make such statements that, when I say some of these things, it will shake the nation, it is a bit scary. And at this time, I think it is beyond Wiper. Now I think NASA has to come in and deal with this, because when you have one part of the house, in mutiny, the whole house might actually come down crashing.
Mudama is said, Prof, to be a very ardent supporter of Raila Odinga. Has this had anything to have with what's happening in Wiper?
Maybe, but my view about this particular matter is that there is now a transition. Kalonzo has found himself stuck between the old guard and the new generation. The new generation clearly has numbers, and along the line, he's been more or less compelled by circumstances to make choices, to make hard choices. For example, it is true, Mudama has played a significant role in the Kalonzo's political game plan for a very long time. But it has also reached a point now when the youngsters are knocking at the door very vigorously. And Kalonzo is simply saying he's got to take a decision. And, when you have an error-prone Mudama is error-prone. He, in this particular case, he made an error that actually helped Kalonzo make a decision. My understanding of this situation is that the population of the youngsters that are in Wiper and are trying to knock at the door of leadership has literally overwhelmed Kalonzo, and he's taken a choice. A few of the old ones may have to go largely through attrition. This is a transitional period through which attrition for the older generation, if you make errors, you can be dispensed with. There will be a few injuries, but I think it will be able to survive. The other thing that is significant in this, that even if Mudama says he supports Raila, it's a contradiction to say you support Raila, you don't support Kalonzo. Logically, it is nonsense.
It's doable.
Right.
It's complete nonsense. So what I think is that Mudama put himself in a no-win situation by saying, opening the mouth left, opening the mouth right, and leaving the center open for youngsters to take the stage.
Dismas, what's your take on this youngsters, new generation that Kalonzo is trying to, let through? Is this, informed by the fact that Alfred Mutua is also trying to become, some kind of a big name in Ukambani politics? Now Kalonzo has to make, a choice.
Well, I think the situation for Muthama is a sad one. Muthama is behaving like a jilted lover. For the longest time, he's had monopoly over Kalonzo Musyoka because he's said to be the person writing a check on a regular basis. But Kalonzo is looking at absolute numbers. And when he's looking at absolute numbers, he's looking at the offering from number one, Wavinya Ndeti. Does Wavinya Ndeti have the ability of kicking out Dr. Mutua? Yes. And does Mr. Kiala have the ability of kicking out Dr. Alfred Mutua? Probably zero. So Kalonzo has decided to embrace Wavinya Ndeti. And he's done the same for Kivuda Kibwana and the same for Dr. Julius Malombe. So Kalonzo is looking at numbers, and that has made Muthama a bit uncomfortable and restless. Because in the past, his word was low. Whatever he wanted, there's a very high chance Kalonzo would run with it. But this time round, there are so many other actors coming on board. Now, that one has been complicated by the youngsters you're referring to, especially for Mr. Enoch Wambua, who used to be a journalist here, who is a very sharp brain, and I hope that he's already printing his business cards, because he's going to be the next Kitui senator. And also there's Mutula Kilonzo. Those are the people who are telling Kalonzo that you can no longer be held hostage by one person. If Wavinya Ndeti is going to assist us kick out Dr. Mutua, we must embrace him. And when you look at all these politicians, their survival is closely anchored, not even on Kalonzo Musyoka, but on Wavinya Ndeti. Because if Wavinya Ndeti does not retain this seat and Dr. Mutua becomes, or rather, Mutua retains the position as governor for Machakos, then things will be so complicated for Kalonzo. And it would even be complicated if NASA doesn't win.
Right.
So if you have NASA losing, and then you have Dr. Mutua as the governor for Machakos, it's going to create a new political space within Machakos. And that's the reason why Kalonzo has decided to support Wavinya Ndeti, much to the chagrin of Muthama, because Muthama all along has not had time for Wavinya Ndeti. And Muthama claims that the nominations were unprocedural. Of course, there was an election, and in as much as one cannot actually place a huge premium on the figures obtained by Wavinya because they look a bit obscene, but still at the end of the day, she won. And there was a repeat. She won for the second time. And Dr. Kivuda did pen an interesting piece that I saw on social media on the origin of their issue. That for Makueni, Kivuda Kibwana is not Muthama's preferred candidate. And the same is the case for for Kitui. So I think it's really competition on who is going to run the show. And in my view, Kalonzo has taken a very good decision. And if Muthama believes that for some reason he's got more political capital than Kalonzo, then maybe he should take him ahead on. Instead of telling us that at some stage I'm going to start revealing. You know,
dossier.
in politics, we shouldn't encourage this thing of kiss and tell.
Yes. Brian, does Mudama have the political capital to go against Kalonzo head to head?
I think we can say she has the financial muscle that we cannot actually just underrate like that. But having said that, I think let's appreciate the fact that Mudama has been the glue that joins, Wiper to ODM. He has been that link. There were times when the relationship looked somehow, wanting a little bit unstable. But Mudama could come out, occasionally and assure the people that all is well within that relationship. And also in terms of bankrolling the party, he's on record that he has actually been sponsoring most of the activities that Wiper and also by and large NASA has been enjoying. And any political practitioner wishing Mudama to be out of the political space within that kind of relationship, I think he'll be doing a big disadvantage to himself, because Mudama is a good mobilizer, is a crowd puller, and you could remember when the party as called used to visit areas like Kisumu or Nyanza, he could be the man who actually used to pull the crowd together, put it on the feet, and ensure there's that vibrancy, there's that perception that all is well within that kind of relationship. And therefore, Mudama, I think so far it's not too late for Kalonzo actually to call for some sort of political truce between and see how his house can still look not leaking, politically speaking.
There's the other issue that Mudama is saying that he has waited, he thinks is unfair. That is the nomination of one Kennedy Kalonzo to the East African Legislative Assembly.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
Well, for Wiper as a whole, I think it's if they come out as a party and say that the young Musyoka is qualified and stuff like that, probably somebody might take that home. But the mere fact that you want to nominate somebody within a party that you had raises some sort of eyebrows. But coming back to Mudama, I think the most important thing that Mudama may want to realize is that you don't become a political kingpin within an ethnic community in a day. And whatever he does, I don't think he will move anywhere close to where Kalonzo is, for the simple reason that, the politics that we have in Kenya is relatively local. And you must have some base from which to spring.
All right.
And all along, I think he's been hanging along Kalonzo Musyoka, and it doesn't look like he has the support of the entire Kamba nation. And then when you look at the genesis of all this, when Senator Mudama said that he's withdrawing his candidature, he had a reason. And one of the reasons was that he can't work with Governor Mtua, and he can't work with Wavinya Ndeti. So whoever wins, he doesn't see a situation where he's going to work with them. And I think that is unfortunate, because now he's bringing in so many other things rather than stick to the principle that I can't work with either of the governor who is likely to win, and therefore let me take a back seat. Bringing in personal issues, I think, is quite unfortunate from a politician of his station.
That was a
Yes.
Actually, with regard to these issues, I wanted to go back to the nomination of the junior Kalonzo. It is unfortunate because that nomination has now put some members of the Wiper party on the same side as the Jubilee noisemakers, who are engaged in obvious contradiction. Because you look very carefully, the Jubilee leader has nominated his relatives to senior government positions. They did not say a word. They have jumped and gone and are complaining about the young Kalonzo. What I would like to say about this particular one is this. There is nothing absolutely wrong with the young Kalonzo's nomination. However, the party must be sensitive to the fact that other people are likely to make this into political capital and use it to generate antagonism against the party leader. Now, in my view, theoretically, I would have wished that now that they formed NASA, Wiper could loan the young Kalonzo to ODM ODM could loan somebody
deals.
to, considering now that they are playing the same political ping pong.
All right.
In other words, to avoid this charge sticking, they must be seen that opportunities and resources are flowing freely between the parties that constitute.
Personally, do you think it's fair for Kalonzo Jr. to be nominated to the EALA?
Personally, I see nothing wrong with it.
Dismas, what do you think about that? Is it okay?
Well, you introduced a very big dynamic about inclusivity. And, Jubilee scores, or rather, Jubilee successfully fails in inclusivity. That are the people who are appointed to particular positions. You must come either from the Kikuyu nation or the Kalenjin nation. And for the longest time, NASA has been telling Kenyans that watch out these people. They will get an A in nepotism and tribalism. Now, from a legal perspective, the young Kalonzo qualifies for that job and understand he's a lawyer. So he actually qualifies for the position. And if you ask any constitutional lawyer, they'll tell you he's a Kenyan. You cannot punish him because of a biological accident. But when you look at the moral, it's morally wrong. Because when your father if you believe that your father is about to become the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, why would you want to compromise that aspiration? And it's the same thing which happened for Raila Odinga, but I think his brother was very wise and he declined the offer right from the word go. So there's nothing wrong in Kalonzo getting this position, or rather the young Kalonzo getting this position. But he should have looked at the wider matrix. If it happens in a more civilized economy or jurisdiction like the US, nobody would complain. Because at some stage in the US, you had 3 Kennedys running the show. Right. And for them, they were running it because they were competent. And even the young Kalonzo is competent. And is going through an electoral process that is actually going to be elected. That a group of the senior body at Wiper sat down and took a decision, and they said, this is the name we are taking to the National Assembly. But Ben, that raises several questions. That team which was seated at Wiper that elected young Kalonzo, did they do it on their free will or they were under duress? Because they knew probably the party leader is watching from somewhere. I think at the end of the day, it would be very good political capital for the young Kalonzo to withdraw his interest, not because he's done anything wrong, but because you don't want to give the Jubilee a lot of mileage for them to throw insults at you.
Do you think it's okay?
I think just like Dismas has explained, it is very okay. Legally, it is okay. But from a moral standpoint, it is something that you want to look at broadly and look at the kind of ammunition you're likely to give your political rivals. Yep.
I want us to follow this thing about exchange. If you want to hybridize, if you want to make NASA a true hybrid of the different parties, then I think some amendment or a way needs to be looked for so that this channel can be followed, so that you reduce the impact of that direct nomination. They are saying, look, we are willing to support Wiper, and the Wiper says we are supporting Amani, this kind of thing. The reason I say this is because that aspect alone should not be used to shut out, all right, to shut out some people who are really emerging leaders. What this country really requires at the moment is emerging leaders, people who have the potential, who have the capacity, the promise, but who, for some manipulative reason, are unable to get an opportunity to serve.
But Ben, allow me to say this. I saw the deputy president rubbing his hands with glee when he was speaking about the young Kalonzo. And also Duale, who's been missing in action, I think, for 4 weeks. He's not had anything substantial to say, but when he saw Kalonzo's name, then all of a sudden he came to light. And one would have imagined that the NASA leadership should have sat down to ask themselves, what happens if I nominate my brother, or my brother is nominated? What happens if my party nominates my son? Because Kenya is a peculiar country. You remember Michael Joseph saying Kenya is a peculiar country. We are very peculiar. In as much as we know that young Kalonzo has got the intellectual infrastructure, but because we are a tribal society, we'll begin to ask, wait a minute, is it the most qualified Kamba? Wiper being a community party, is this the most qualified Kamba for this position? And I think it would have given him more mileage if he would have elected one of the Kambas who have lost and sent them to Yala.
Yes, Brian, the final thought.
Ben, I would request I do not comment much on this because I was an interested party in the Yala and things did not go well. Just because of reasons that I do not want to.
Because of these reasons.
Oh, yes, because they are related to this.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We shall be discussing what the implications are for what's happening in Wiper in the larger NASA picture later on. Let's now speak about this high cost of living, the skyrocketing price of basic commodities that has been ongoing for the last 2 or so weeks. It is turning out to be an issue in this election.
Yes.
Is it?
Yes, it is a big issue, Ben. And first of all, I want to appreciate the place that we are coming from. We are transiting from a situation where the country at large was experiencing serious drought. And I am, I'm an interested party when it comes to issues of drought mitigation in this country, in the kind of engagement that I do as a citizen. And I want to say that having visited all the counties that perhaps were highly affected, I could for sure tell you that some of these factors that we would want to see the government as incompetent or, unable to provide for its citizens, I think the kind of damage that I saw across the country would actually tilt the scales to where we are right now. I want to say that as much as we are talking about drought, I've seen huge numbers of livestock losing their lives. I've seen people dying also of hunger. I've seen the climate tilting to a situation where it cannot support adequate production of food. And therefore, that's a big contributor to the situation where we are finding ourselves.
Are
and
you trying to
as a
acknowledge
government,
the Jubilee government
just a second.
for not being able to contain
Well, I'm
cost of
saying
living?
this is a natural fact. I'm saying Jubilee has a role. Of course, Jubilee has a role to ensure that at least citizens are cushioned against this kind of problem. That's why at least you could see a government which is sensitive to its people, at least trying to do something at least to cushion the people according to the law. Article 43, of course, Sabbatical C, talks about the government's ability to provide citizens with adequate food and ensure that nobody dies of hunger. And that's what exactly they are doing. But the factors that are contributing to where we are finding ourselves as a country is what we need to interrogate whether the government really did enough or never foresaw this coming.
All right, fair enough. So as we speak, 2 kilograms of sugar retailing at around 350 to 400 shillings.
Bad
2
enough.
kilograms. What's your take on this, Hezbon, in terms of Jubilee's responsibility in ensuring, that Kenyans can afford a meal?
I think the blame squarely lies with the government of the day, and fortunately or unfortunately, it's the Jubilee government today, because as you look at the cost of things since they came to power, I think things have just gone from bad to us. Sugar is a basic commodity, a basic necessity for each and every household. And when you have prices of sugar skyrocketing and sometimes you go to the supermarket, big supermarkets, there is no sugar, there is no maize flour. It's very unfortunate. And then you want to ask yourself, if this is a government that was serious on making the lives of Kenyans better, then what exactly have they done? And you remember the narrative that they've been propagating. Most of the things that they've done, if you look at them critically, you'd want to assume that if it is true what they've done, then we are supposed to have, the cost of basic commodities come down. Because you talk about power. Power is a critical factor of production. They're talking about, distributing power all over the country. Now, to what extent is that true if then we have the cost of so many things skyrocketing? And then I want to respond to what Brian has said, that you cannot attribute this to drought, because if you look at the countries where now you're getting this food from, I mean, they are not any different from Kenya. If anything, Kenya is far much agriculturally productive compared to most of the countries where we are going to get maize from. And the countries that we import sugar from. I think coming from a sugar belt region, I understand the intricacies. When you don't have sugar, the other day I was talking to a friend of mine who was telling me there is no sugar, and they don't have money for maintenance. So it's a bit tricky for these sugar manufacturing factories, because one, this is the time they can take to maintain the factories. But then even that money to maintain the factories is not there. So when they'll have sugar, they'll still want to look for money to maintain the factories, and which means that the cost is slightly going to remain high for some considerable time in the near future. But being an election year, and Kenyans being who they are, you may want to assume that the cost of food, the inflation that we're experiencing right now is going to be a critical factor in the election. I think if it is, it's going to be a critical factor to a very marginal extent, for the simple reason that in this country, ultimately, the bulk of Kenyans vote along tribal lines.
Right.
Yes.
Let's talk about this Mexican ship that we are told that
MV what?
importation of maize. What is your take on this whole row?
Let me make preliminary comments. One, the Mexican ship is part and parcel of the bandit economy. It's one of those players. One of the players is responsible for that Mexican ship incident. But what I want to go back to, Ben, is the issue of the shortage of essentials. There is no political establishment anywhere in the world where resource distribution and everyday survival requirements are not a political issue. I find it, you'll excuse for me using this word, hearing some civil servants making political statements that don't make mambo ya unga a political, don't politicize. It sounds, for me, from my little experience around the world, it is almost incestuous for them to be making that statement. Two, there is an interesting thing. This shout about drought, there was a warning from the meteorological department in May last year, and in July last year, and in November last year, that there is likely to be a very severe drought. So the government of the day had the duty and responsibility to put in place mitigating measures to contain those aspects that are likely to affect the common man. When Jubilee promotes, she says these people are promoting whatever and they are promoting development. To me, development means improvement in the survival kit of the ordinary person, the quality of life. Improvement is not SGR. Improvement is not what you call GDP. Improvement is simply everyday appreciation. I mean, I am very passionate about this because this is the major injury that our country has suffered from, a double speak. People talk this way, but the ordinary man is left wondering, what were you saying?
Let me allow Brian to respond on this.
Yes.
The Jubilee government had a whole year to prepare for this.
Absolutely, I do agree
What's
with
the
you.
excuse?
I do agree with him. But there are other factors. And Ben, you are pretty aware that in economics, we also have some terminology such as hoarding. And hoarding over items or goods is a practice that has been actually run by cartels everywhere, petrol, maize, and sugar. And the sugar and the maize being such sensitive items in this country, you are likely to see a situation where some people, in the name of profiteering or profit-making process, coming up together, ganging up together to keep these items at ransom for some time in terms of hoarding. And we're not eliminating that. And I'm not saying that should be the biggest contributor to the problem at hand. But I'm just saying that is one of the issues that perhaps could be happening. And again, when you talk about government unable to put mitigation measures, I want to tell you that if you look at, the whole kind of scenario, the biggest problem that the government perhaps, and I'm not defending the government because I'm not its peace mouth, first of all. I want to say that any government that's sensitive to its people, if you take the time that this ship left from Mexico to Kenya, it is almost a month or 2 months. And you can take that period as a period that has already been sat down and planned for, before even the ship comes from Mexico all the way to here. So this must be something that had been planned before by the government.
Fair point. But are you saying the government is unable to deal with cartels?
Well, we are operating in a free market economy, Ben, and the government cannot be everywhere. So what I'm saying, a free market economy allows everybody to try or experiment whatever business that he feels that
Even
this
hoarding.
is a model that will give me profit.
All right.
So you have no
Fair enough.
control on
Fair
free
enough.
market economy.
Dismas, what's your take on this?
But number one, you recall when Jubilee launched the manifesto, then Mr. William Samoei Ruto said, Kenya will never, ever again suffer from food insecurity. And if you go to, as the brand says, if you go to a dictionary, food security means that every single Kenyan must access food, and the food must be affordable. And you must be able to take food which the World Health Organization recommends as your regular diet. So when you talk about food security in Kenya, it doesn't exist, and that's a big failure on the Jubilee administration. Now, when you get some people trying to say that you cannot blame Jubilee administration for climatic change, for global warming, and stuff like that, there are people who are retained by the Kenyan government to do planning, who are supposed to know how much maize is consumed on a monthly basis, and if there's going to be a deficit, how do you meet that? You know, for the farmer, or rather for the consumer that Ruto was addressing yesterday in Migori, they don't want all these explanations. You know what Ruto says, kizungu mingi na catwalk. For the consumer, they want to be sure that they've got maize at the table. And it's very shocking that the CS for Devolution, Mwangi Kiunjuri, can actually admit in public that we have cartels in Kenya that are holding the country hostage, that are increasing the cost of living. Therefore, admitting that the Jubilee administration is unable to manage these cartels. If a government headed by President Kenyatta cannot manage cartels, then what are they doing in office? How can they allow Kenyans to suffer at the expense of such kind of cartels? How can they allow the cartels to hold the country hostage? It's actually the president then admitting through Mwangi Kiunjuri that he's unable to run the nation. And then when Kiunjuri says there's some folks holding maize in Mombasa and sugar items, why can't they use the necessary, legal infrastructure to invade them and release these products to the marketplace? Because they were given licenses to import these products. Right. So if you've been authorized to import these products, why are you holding the country hostage? And I see Professor is struggling to say something. But I must address the issue of taxation.
Right.
When a country has got a maize deficit, you do not come with taxation measures to alleviate the situation. That's like a painkiller. If you're suffering from malaria, you are given malaria queen. You're not given a Panadol. And you cannot use tax incentives to look at that. We are supposed to look at the supply side. And I know there are many farmers in Rift Valley who are unable to sell their maize because the price is low. Right. And Esboni spoke about the sugar crisis in Kenya. There are some sugarcane farmers where it comes from who are using sugarcane as firewood today as we speak, because all the industries or factories are closed down. It looks to me like there's a conspiracy by the cartel that Brian talks about to hold the country hostage, make money maybe for the campaigns, or generally just
to take this a bit further,
yes.
There is an aspect that is a little bit sensitive to discuss. If you look very carefully, if you look at Parliament, if you look at government, very critically, without mentioning names, the government knows who are the team leaders of these cartels. They know who is given an import license. They know who offloads and stores. And they know who transports. They know who mills. And they know who distributes. So the question of management incompetence, or it is deliberate incompetence, because there is a very strong suspicion that the people in government who are making these very pious statements are the same ones who have economic interest in these stages of acquisition and distribution of resources. There was a day somebody was asking me to give names. Obviously, for practical, legal, and professional reasons, you do not give these names. But the issue is, until the president decides that some of the, what do you call them, holy cows will not be touched. I mean, until he decides to touch them, we will still be in this limbo. Right. Which means then that Jubilee has held itself hostage towards solving this problem. Because until they dissociate themselves from the cartels and therefore have capacity to deal with them, I think we are in a very,
It's a big conversation.
Actually, yes. but can you allow me to just to buttress that point for a while? I think now it's important for Mwangi Kiunjuri, because he says those holders and cartels are domiciled in Mombasa. One would imagine he knows the names. I think he must now be challenged to lift the veil of incorporation and table those names at a media conference or give the names to Duale to disclose those names at the National Assembly so that we can confirm from Professor Tumbo whether indeed these team leaders of the various cartels, are they members of the National Assembly? Are they in the Senate? Are they cabinet secretaries? Are they part of NASA leadership? Are they part of Jubilee leadership? So that we actually know, even if the prices are not going to come down, we at least need to know who is this team leader of a cartel who makes maize in Kenya unaffordable, who makes sugar in Kenya unaffordable. Then it's a tragedy for Kenya, the biggest economy in the region, to find our citizens going to Isebania to buy sugar, or going to Uganda to buy sugar, or going to Ethiopia to buy sugar, and then we claim that we've achieved so much progress. It's even, it's dehumanizing that the president, when he's on his London trip, he said that foodstuffs in Kenya are not vatable, and they had to wait for the last minute to do imports. Then you begin to wonder, which interest is the president looking at? Is he looking at the consumers, or is he looking at these cartels who are holding the country hostage? And this reminds you of the French Revolution, when people were rioting all over. And then Maria Antoinette said, if these guys are rioting, why can't you give them cake? And, you know...
They're looking for bread.
Yeah, you know, it makes you feel like the president or Jubilee is disconnected from Wananchi. And you know where I come from, Ben? If you prepare for somebody's supper using rice or chapati, they'll tell you they slept on an empty stomach. Because, you know, for us, it's all about ugali. And it's about ugali and ugali. Now. And we want to see more ugali on the table. We don't want to start mentioning ugali.
Premium meal.
Yes.
Right. So it's a big conversation that, of course, brings us to this question. Is this going to be an issue of the election that Jubilee will be grappling with? Husband?
I think it's political. And, you know, when you talk about it not, you know, being something Jubilee can handle because it's drought, I would understand. But now when you bring in the issue of a cartel that is holding these products, therefore waiting for the prices to rise, and then there's no one who is acting, it simply means that these cartels are acting the behest of the political class. And it's a bit obvious that the protectors of these cartels are in government. But therefore, to have cabinet secretaries say that the opposition should not take advantage of this is again missing the point, because the mere fact that they are protected means that it's a political issue. It's going to be big, and I think the political class will run with it for some time. My only problem is, to what extent is this going to change the mindset of the voter, so much so that the voter votes consciously and makes a choice based on who did what to address the plight of Kenyans?
In Nairobi, it's a big issue.
Let me say something.
In the other areas where the language you speak is more important than your immediate requirement, is a different dimension.
I think, Ben, we need also to appreciate that the economy is operating, you know, at the mercy of the political, you know, space. And I want to say that while we need to detach the three pillars, that's the social, economic, and the political, it is important that these pillars are all intertwined in the sense that they, you know, depend on each other. And the reason why I'm saying so is that we seem to have put a lot of energy, emphasis, focus on the issues of elections at the expense of issues that, you know, directly touch at the core of the heart of the Mwananchi. And while we also need to appreciate the fact that the country, in our country, politics start immediately we swear our president in, we need to change that track from that kind of a situation to where we see things, you know, in a sort of way that we are able to say, as much as we are being treated to elections and electioneering process, we have other issues that we have to deal with. The issue of economy is a very key issue.
All right.
And I want to say this before I sign off on that one. While
Kenyans
we want
are
to say,
political animals,
come again?
I say.
Yeah, I think just to respond to this, I think you cannot divorce politics from anything, because the mere fact that politics has been defined as the distribution and allocation of resources means that there is a lot of economy in the politics, there is a lot of our social structure in politics. And ask yourself, do politicians get to seek this office because of the salaries? No. They're actually looking for these offices because they'll get power to decide, you know, the bulk of what will inform our economic, social...
All right, gentlemen, that is where we leave it in terms of looking at the political pages. We did do a lot on this issue of the high cost of living. We shall, of course, continue to keep an eye on that. There's a story here on page 22 of the Sunday Standard. Karua Waiguru battle getting more complicated. That is, of course, the Kirinyaga gubernatorial battle with the entry of Deputy Governor Ndegwa, who will also be running for that gubernatorial position. All the three others, Martha Karua, Joseph Ndadi, and Anne Waiguru, all coming from Gishugu constituency. So it will be very interesting to see. You can take a look at that analysis by Alan Mungai on page 22 of the Sunday Standard. Many thanks for staying with us here on Sunday edition. When we return, we shall be getting into the politics proper now, taking a look at the IEBC's preparedness for the elections. We took a look at the NASA and Jubilee, the state of the race. We shall be going to Chris Tairo in Nakuru to give us an update on what's happening there as NASA are preparing to hold a rally in the county of Nakuru. Don't go too far, we're back shortly.